Hello and welcome to episode 13 of series 4 of the Engaging Internal Comms podcast. This is the show for employee engagers and internal communicators who like to keep up to date with all that is new in our profession. My name's Craig Smith from The Big Picture People. Well, we had quite a long-winded introduction to last week's episode, with it being our 100th, so I'm going to be quite a lot more concise this week, just to give you a quick heads up on what we've got coming up in the next couple of episodes. So on the 4th of July, we have an interview with Kevin Herring from Ascent Consulting. Kevin is going to be telling us all about context and connection and why they matter, very much in the context of employee engagement. How do we make sure that our employees fully understand the context of the organization, understand the big picture, but also how do we help them to connect that to their work? So that's a really good interview, really good conversation that I had with Kevin. And then coming up, the following episode after that on the 18th of July is an interview with Jim Gitney. Now, Jim is from Group 50, and he's going to be telling us all about how we can communicate strategic intent. Again, one of the things we try to find with organizations is they struggle to communicate some of what their strategies are all about to their employees and to get them really kind of all pointing in the same direction. And Jim's going to be giving us some really practical advice and tips on how we can do that. So that's what we've got coming up in the next couple of episodes after today's. Hope you enjoy it. Just a final thing, as I always say, please, if you hear anything on the podcast that you think anyone in your network would value, or anything that we covered in the shows, in previous shows, in our previous 100 episodes, please share it with them. Let them know. Give it a share. Let's get more listeners, and the more listeners we have, then the more we can grow the podcast, get more guests, and for onward and upwards. Anyway, I'll let you listen to today's interview. In previous episodes of the Engaging Internal Comms podcast, we've interviewed a lot of people who've been in the profession for a number of years, whether they're working as internal managers and leaders of internal communications or employee engagement, or whether they're now working in their own consultancy roles outside of the business. A voice that we've rarely heard, though, is that of people who are new to the profession. Often it's quite difficult to find people who are new to an internal comms role, who are willing to step forward and talk on a show like this. Or sometimes it's just that they don't feel as though they have anything useful to contribute, and therefore they're not going to be proactive in coming forward. However, I was recently approached by today's guest who came forward, who did want to talk about their experiences, mostly positive, in fact, or mainly positive in terms of their role and their new role within internal communications, but also someone who's got a lot of drive and passion and commitment for other causes outside of their professional role, and someone who's clearly very keen to learn and to try new experiences. So what I've did today is we've in today's episode is we have an interview with someone who's new to the profession. They've just joined a big organisation and as an internal comms specialist, having just recently graduated in a internal comms related degree, with an internal comms related degree, and they're going to be sharing with us some of their initial experiences of moving into the profession, how they found it, the things that they've found passion for, things that they've also found ways of fitting in with an established organisation and with an established profession, which they're relatively new to, despite having a number of experiences in their university work and outside of their professional work. So that's what today's all about. It's all about how internal comms professions, how we're accepting and inclusive we are, bringing new people in that we've spent time recruiting, but also a lot of professional institutions that look after internal comms at the moment are very keen to make internal comms a career of choice. And I think what we can do from today's interview is establish what some of those drivers are and what some of the unique selling points are for internal comms and employee engagement to allow us to attract more talented people. So I hope you find today's interview inspiring and interesting, and a very different perspective from the one that we've normally had. My guest today is Zane Landin. Zane is a recent graduate from California State Polytechnic University with a Bachelor of Science in Communication and Public Relations. Zane is a passionate entrepreneur, an advocate for social justice, and he has worked for a number of brands and organizations like General Motors, Sage Publishing, NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and these experiences have prepared him to be culturally competent and a good communicator. He's recently landed a job as his first internal communications job as an internal communications specialist at National Geographic. So, hello, Zane. How are you?
I'm doing well today. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Could you tell us a little bit about where you are in the world, Zane? I know you're in the United States, but tell us a little bit about where you are, just so our listeners, because we have listeners all over the world, can position you.
Absolutely. I am currently based in Washington, D.C., the United States of America's nation capital. And before I was a huge California native, and I could say that was my identity 4 months ago. So I've only been in this part of the country for, like I said, 4 months. And it's a bit of a culture slash weather shock, as well as adjusting to living on my own and having again, the first ever entry level position for me as I just graduated in May with my Bachelor of Science in Communication.
Yeah, fantastic. So you've had a lot of change then. So you've not only have you graduated, you've moved literally right across from one side of the country to the other, and you're in a new job and a new profession. So that's fairly daunting for even the most experienced of us. So well done on that. Tell us a little bit more about your work, Zane. So as an entry level, as in your role as internal communications specialist at National Geographic. First of all, it might be actually worth just. I think we probably all know National Geographic as a brand across the globe, but do you want to tell us a little bit more about the part of National Geographic that you're working in, and then a little bit more maybe about the role that you have within National Geographic?
Yeah, and the thing is, the brand National Geographic, there is, kind of a distinction. There is the National Geographic Partners, which is what you would say is Disney. And because Disney occupied a large chunk of National Geographic a couple years ago, and now there are Disney employees that work for the National Geographic brand. The
Hmm.
National Geographic Society is where I work. It's still under the Nat Geo brand, but the society specifically is the nonprofit sector, and they
Right.
are the ones who are actually funding and engaging with the actual funded explorers, where Disney is mostly the media side of things and telling the stories of the explorers on a grand scale. I just to go back to your point, it was a really daunting experience, and the whole moving and the whole immersing yourself in a new environment and culture was really frightening to me. I almost
Mm,
didn't take the job because of that reason. I told myself this wouldn't be for me. I don't want to move. It'll be too
mm,
overwhelming. I think I should just start with a career here in California and kind of stay where I am. But then I felt like if I'm physically staying where I am, I'm going to stay where I am in my mind, and I'm not going to grow as a professional if I am just doing a job in my room at my parents' house. Not to say that you can't grow that way,
mm,
but what how will I exponentially grow as a professional, not where I feel comfortable, but where I'm challenging myself. And that is here. And even yesterday, I went to New York for an in person podcast about breaking echo chambers from the Gen Z perspective, which was really exciting. And I got to speak on TV about mental health for the Sinclair Broadcasting Group did something called Sinclair Cares, and
mm.
because I'm on the youth board for the National Alliance on Mental Illness, I know we didn't even mention it, but I'm really passionate about mental health,
Yeah.
and I am on the youth board for that organization. They do amazing things, and they had this media opportunity in person in Washington D.C. So even just being here, more doors have just naturally opened.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, well, good for you. And I mean, I think that, again, I know we're going to talk a little bit about kind of the sort of generational challenges as well, I think, in terms of sometimes working in larger organizations. But good for you in terms of, stepping out of your comfort zone massively and recognizing that, kind of what is comfortable or isn't always the best for our personal development. But it takes a lot of guts to do that. So good for you. And your role in National Geographic then. So how many people work there? You're an internal communications specialist. What are some of the things you're doing in this role, Zane?
Are several things I think as internal communications people, and this is again me coming in a very fresh perspective.
Mm,
Internal communications, I think, it can be a very big profession. It's a challenging task to work with several partners of the organization and determine what needs to be communicated, what's appropriate, how to communicate it, because there's a certain way, of course, and how to engage employees and make it clear that, this is what's happening, this is what's exciting, and be as transparent as possible. And understanding that level of transparency, especially if something is not specifically even finalized yet, but even just putting it on employees' radars, all that stuff. And so I get to do, an internal newsletter that goes out to every single person weekly.
Hmm.
I get
Hmm.
to help with, a lot of the executive communications. I'm not on the executive communications team, but we get to support their team because a lot of it cross cuts with internal communications. And I just love that internal communications gets to work with several partners like technology or HR or legal, a lot of areas that I probably would never even touch if I were on the external communications team. The exciting thing, I also think it just prepares you to be an effective communicator and a professional because you
Mm.
are communicating with people across the division, whether it's the CEO or if it's an entry level person.
Yeah, that's really good. And I think what I'm taking from that is that what you've recognised is that it's given you exposure to a lot of people and experiences, and really kind of cross-cutting experiences that you probably wouldn't get in a similar level role in a maybe more conventional part of the business. So I think that's a really important point there, to because I know a lot of people who listen to the podcast, are in senior internal comms roles or aspiring to be, and I think it's always really important to recognize what the USP of internal comms is, because sometimes you can't see the wood for the trees when you've been doing it for so long, and I think that's a really good point. One of the things I noticed on your LinkedIn profile, Zane, was for someone so young, you've already got 115 different experiences. That's how many I counted anyway, which is phenomenal. Tell me a little bit about, and you may not know this, you may never have really reflected on this. Where does you've clearly got a huge hunger and a passion to learn and get involved and push yourself out of your comfort zone, which you've already talked about. Given the move from California to DC, where does that come from, Zane? Have you ever really thought about that, or have you ever kind of analysed that yourself, or is it something you're kind of working on in terms of understanding what drives your motivation in that area?
It's a fascinating question because I almost kind of sunk into that mentality of
Mm,
not going out of my comfort zone, as I just kind of shared before. Like,
yeah.
I almost didn't accept the job because I wanted to be comfortable. And I think one of the hardest things that people can do is embrace that feeling of discomfort. And I
Mm,
understand, like, we don't want to be uncomfortable. Like, as humans, we want to be aligned. We want to be balanced. You know what I mean? And that makes sense. Like,
yeah. Yeah,
you
you don't want to
always
be
want to have that.
continuously terrified and and anxious of, kind of feeling that everything is uncertain. I think you need a certain amount of stability. But yeah, sorry, Zane. Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And there are people, like a lot of entrepreneurs that thrive on risk taking and
Mm,
but still, I think that you still need a certain level of consistency, and having the balance is important. You don't want to be all risk, and you don't want to be completely comfortable. Like, you got to find the balance. And some people thrive on having a really risk taking mentality, but some don't. And
mm,
but also just try and look for places you can challenge yourself. And it's not like you put all your eggs in one basket. I mean, put one egg in a basket. You don't need to go from 0 to 100. You can definitely go like, oh, maybe even speaking up at a meeting or asking that question that you have in a meeting is
mm.
going out of your comfort zone. Very simple things like that. And I say simple, but that doesn't mean it's simple for someone else.
No,
But,
I understand. Yeah.
these, it's just about taking the small steps. And sometimes taking a leap can be overwhelming because you don't know what you're getting into. It could be great. It could be scary. And so, taking your time with it, I think is good. But I will share that I don't know. I think I remember just not, for a long time, I was always directionless. I didn't really know where I was going. And in fact, I didn't really have everything together. And I still don't. I don't think most
Mm,
people do. I think most people are figuring things out. I think that's okay. And
yeah.
I think that's what young people, I hope, can understand one day. And I hope they're not putting too much pressure on themselves.
So Zane, I think what I've picked up from that is that you're really that the openness to possibility, the fact again even at your young age you've recognised that and you're totally right. I'm significantly older than you, and I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. And I think you've got to, I know a lot of people who have gone down very prescribed routes, and that, kind of gone down a very, very mapped out way of living their life in terms of their careers. And I'm a great believer in giving yourself freedom and allowing serendipity, and that's just my take. But I'm very similar to you, and that would always be my advice: is don't box yourself in, because you never know these days whether if you're going to go down one particular route, things can quickly become very obsolete. In our world, things that look like a job for life can suddenly evaporate, given the way that technology is advancing. So you're very wise to get as much experience and as breadth as possible, so you can you can learn and apply that, and switch if you have to switch tracks, because that's a really important thing to be able to do. I want to go on to
And
just
yeah, and
talk
I
a
just
little
want
bit.
to share.
Sorry, Zane. Yeah, go on.
No, and I just want to say, yeah, and I know you mentioned, the LinkedIn experience, and some of the things on there for experience I have as committee members, as a leader. It's not necessarily all of it hardcore what experience is. I think
Mm,
that's a good thing, because I am starting to, work one on one with people about their careers and people who are looking
mm,
for jobs. I've done 3 to 4 calls recently, and like a lot of them actually got the job that I helped them prep for. Not
mm,
saying it's all me, of course, because it's not. Of course, it's their talents, but I try and provide a unique perspective on what recruiters might be looking for from my
yeah,
experience. 'Cause I am not a recruiter. I don't claim to be, but these are things that have helped me. And what I think is the biggest gap that people, but I'm specifically talking about young people, is they do not see the experience that they have. What I mean is, like, they'll look at a project, they'll look at a class assignment, they'll look at extracurriculars, and they'll go, "That's not the experience employers are looking for." And I'm like, "Well, what kind of experience are they looking for?" They said, like, "Oh, working in the office." And I'm like, "You see that. They might see a huge value in you bringing it up. I think if you can look at the job description and connect it to an extracurricular or something you've accomplished, it doesn't matter
mm,
what,
mm,
that speaks volumes to you." And I think that that is actually,
definitely.
they'll be impressed by that. And so, like, when they say I don't have experience in doing like market research, I'm like, you have actually. You just don't have the traditional market research background that you're thinking of, but you have the market research, just not in the way you're thinking.
Very good advice. Very good advice. I'd like to know how you found, because you're a Gen Z. You're kind of the sort of person that people wanting to get. Particularly with someone with your drive and enthusiasm and experience that you've got, and your outlook on life. What have your first impressions been of going into both the profession? And I know I don't probably don't want you to comment on any of your currently your current or previous employers, but just generally, how have you found it an inclusive? Have you felt it easy to feel a sense of belonging? Have you found it's stuffy and a bit traditional in places? What's your first reaction? And again, we're not commenting on any specific organizations, but just generally coming into this profession, what's it been like for someone of your age, and but with, well, also with someone with your huge potential? Have organizations allowed you to express yourself, or have you had to kind of restrict that in some way, Zane?
Coming into it as a new professional, thinking that, and when I saw the role, like, I wasn't even like, when I saw it was National Geographic Society, and I thought that was exciting, but I really was just interested in the job description, because I felt like
Mm,
every single thing I wanted to do, it was aligned with what I wanted to learn. And coming into it, it's just really exciting. And again,
mm,
because I feel like I get to be on so many levels with senior leaders, entry level people, mid managers, mid senior level. Like, it's really exciting on the people I get to interact with, and I get to really meet a lot of people across the organization who are doing such fantastic work that I get to help amplify or support. And I think one of the best things, and not even just a profession, but when an organization has like inclusion networks or
yeah,
employee resource groups, I think those are really exciting. And
yeah,
internal communications will touch that, because like, their employee resource groups, they touch the internal side of the business. Like, it's not an external thing. Like, this is for employees, and by employees and for employees. And so we want to tell the stories of what these networks are doing. And for me, what I love about the role I'm in is I get to touch a lot of DEI stuff.
Mm.
and or a lot of DEIA stuff. And I am a member of all the inclusion networks. All six, we have six of them, and I'm a member of all six. I attend all of the meetings as much as I can because it is a lot to attend all six. But luckily, they all don't meet weekly or anything. They may meet once a month or twice a month, and they'll have events. And I attend some of them. I help with some of them.
Very good. So you sound. It's. I think it does sound like you've been. You've as is your style. It sounds like you've thrown yourself into it, heart and soul, but also that you found it a welcoming and a place where you have been able to express yourself, which I think is really, really, really positive. Zane. Zane, before we finish, I want to talk a little bit about your you've already mentioned it a couple of times about your obviously your passion for inclusion and diversity, but also your work with mental health and Mental Health Youth Action Forum, and also I know you've been involved. You've got a magazine, Positive Vibes, which is something you've started and grown yourself. So there's a lot of things there. Do you want to kind of just tell us a little bit more about where that came from, Zane, and how you're involved and what sort of work you're doing there?
Yeah, for the longest time, mental health was something that I always experienced from a very young age. And I always tell people that to give the context that it's
Mm,
something I've lived with for a long time. It's not something I stumbled upon. And for the longest time, I just considered it something to work on. I always thought, mental health is something that I work on. I saw a psychologist when I was in middle school to the end of high school, and I thought I got relatively better, until you never know what life is going to hit you with. And so there
mm,
were times where during school I was, engaging in self harm. I was very much suicidal, like a lot, and I had to take a semester off.
mm,
And again, a setback like that can feel like a lot because you're losing an entire semester.
mm,
And so when that happened, that's afterward, I really became an advocate, mental health advocate. And even though I was kind of an advocate before, just being aware and like being really understanding of people when they experience that, because I have, but now I felt like I was an advocate on a new scale, which was, actually engage with organizations, actually start conversations, create the space for people to talk about mental health. Because in university, there's not a lot of space to talk about it. Sure, you can go and see a psychologist and you can go get professional help, but where's the community? Where can we actually interact as students to talk about these pressing issues that impact our mental health? So, I got really involved in Active Minds, which is a, college based mental health organization. And after that, I just got involved in so many other areas with mental health and disability because I joined a disability organization and I learned so much more about disability as well. And I found out I was neurodiverse and there's just so many different things happening. And
yeah.
so I thought, what can I do? I was taking a class where we had to create our own publication. I thought, I want to do a publication on positive mental health storytelling. And what that means, I don't know, but I want that to be the theme. And it was a project night. I was texting my friend and I had the idea, why don't we just start this? People start stuff all the time. Why don't we just do it? And so her and I started it. We started off with just social media. Then it moved into a website. Then it moved into actually interviewing folks that we never thought we would do because I thought we were just going to share our perspectives on different topics. And that is where things change indefinitely for it, and I think
Mm,
that's great. That's entrepreneurs. You have to kind of see the trends and see what works and also see what new opportunities are. And that's what we did. We thought, let's take the angle of interviewing people. And it was
yeah.
really exciting. And I love that. I love doing it because I love creating the space for people to not just share about their mental health, but their whole story. And I understand people are a little hesitant 'cause sometimes the media can like sometimes misquote you, and it's not a good thing. That's why every single time we release a story, before it goes out, I send it to the person like, "This is the draft. You edit whatever the heck you want because this is your story. We're just
Yeah.
the medium here."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so my understanding of mental health and the magazine also I wouldn't say it made me more empathetic, but I was just so much more aware of different factors that contribute to mental health than I was before. And I think that made me such a better advocate. And that's why I think I was chosen for the forum. If I didn't start that magazine, and it's called Positive Vibes Magazine. I didn't even
Yeah.
mention the
Yeah.
name,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah. So then I was
And what-
accepted. Wonderful opportunity where I actually got to meet Selena Gomez as the keynote, and then I met President Biden, and it's just to be at that level and to have that space where I can actually do something like that was nothing I ever
Yeah.
anticipated.
No.
I always envisioned myself going to the White House at one point, never this early. I always thought it was going to be maybe when I was 50 or 60. And I was like, towards the end of my career, and maybe I've done great things and I get to be awarded there. That's what I
Yeah.
always was dreaming of. But this was so exciting because it was something I get to speak on passionately about.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic, and again, massive congratulations again. I think it sounds a fair reward for the effort and passion that you've put in there, Zane. So, just finishing off, I'd like to just kind of go back to your role and the fact that you're new to the internal comms profession and you're in this entry level role. And I hate using that term because you've got probably more skills and experience than, as I was saying earlier, a lot of people who've been in the profession for a long time, but just what do you, if I was a kind of a senior manager managing people like yourself in an in an initial kind of sort of startup role in internal comms, what advice would you give to me to get the best out of you and out of people of your age and your with your kind of experience and new to the profession? What are some of the things managers and leaders can do who are managing internal comms specialists who are new to the profession to get the best out of them, Zane? And it may be things they've already done, but it may be things that you're thinking, this I'd really like it if maybe they could do this or they did this. This would bring out the best in me and even more of the best in me, that sort of thing.
The best way you can manage someone is not necessarily be a manager, but to be a mentor. I think is one of the most important things. And I think that if you get rid of the labels of manager, entry level, and you invest in your employees, they're not there to just do a job. They're there to grow. They're there to be leaders. And to me, it's like if you can actually foster that leadership and provide them opportunities like, here's this really great leadership training I think you would be great in. And just thinking about them on that end, I think that's great because you always think about how they can grow and how they can always better themselves. When you're new, there's so many things to think about. Like being socialized into a new company culture is another thing. Like that can be a culture shock, especially if you're new. Like I'm a first gen professional too. Like my parents didn't work in corporate, so I had no idea. That's why I did so many programs, a lot of experience too. Because
Yeah.
I thought I needed to prove myself. But that kind of can go into the hustle burnout culture, which I don't have
Yeah.
to go into. But there's just so many things that you learn through the job, and also every culture is different and every team is different, because just because a company has a great culture, that team's culture may not be the best. So sometimes the team can really make it too. Like some people say, oh, review the company online, and it's like, but that team you're entering, who knows? So
Yeah.
be mindful that just because it's a big name like Disney or something like that, that doesn't mean that they may not have teams that may not be helpful. And
Yeah.
you have to understand your growth and what you want, and you may not be getting that from a team, and that means you move or you can find a new job.
Yeah.
And I also think that there's a learning curve, right? I think that if you're new to a company, like I said, that's one thing. And if you're even new to the whole profession, that's another thing. And I think that there's a lot to learn. And of course, I'm always learning. I don't think I'll be comfortable in this comfortable. Like I mean comfortable, like, you know, um, self-sufficient. I still think I
Yeah.
need to rely on my boss and my coworkers still because I'm still very new. But I think like
Yeah.
you have to give yourself time, and I hope managers understand that if someone's new, give them time, like give them grace to work on a project and always have an open door policy. Like let them ask questions. Don't discourage them. Encourage them to ask questions.
Excellent. Well, don't you? My advice to you, Zane, would write those things down, and don't forget them, because when you do become a manager, yeah, it sounds like you've got all of the potential there to be a really good manager when you step up, because you've learned a lot of things there. And I think a lot of my experience in managing is the best managers are the people who kind of recognize what a good manager looks like while they're being managed, and then try and deliver that when they actually get that opportunity. Because I think that's a really, there's a lot of people who I think who forget what it was like to be in your position. So that's a good really good summary, I think, there for anyone who's listening here who's managing people regardless of what stage of their own career they're at, in terms of what we want from employment. And I guess we all know that, but sometimes we lose sight of that, I think. Look, Zane, I'm going to wrap things up. That was a really, really fascinating conversation. I appreciate your openness, your honesty, and I think again, on behalf of the listeners, I think probably want to just sort of play back to you, how amazingly you've kind of grasped the opportunities that have been presented to you. And I believe you me that people who do that are not in the majority. So you definitely got some sort of unique drive and commitment there that I think you serve you really well and have served you really well. So fantastic. So thank you so much, Zane. I wish you all the best. Please keep in touch. I'm going to put some links in the show notes. I was going to put your LinkedIn profile. Did you want me to put a link into your Positive Vibes magazine as well? I'm happy to do that if any of the listeners want to have a look at that as well. If you could send me the URL for that after we've wrapped up, if that's okay.
That is okay. That would be great. And then you can also include my Instagram. I will send both links to you.
Please do, yeah.
I only say because my Instagram, well, for one, it is a professional Instagram, and I am active mostly on there and LinkedIn. So that would be
great. Yeah, that's cool. That'd be really good. And then gives you some Google links as well back to your Positive Vibes magazine as well, which is, we always want those things, don't we? So look, Zane, thank you so much. Thank you for you reached out to me to this interview. I should point that out. That was, you again, just a demonstration of your initiative, and I think all of these qualities I think are what most employers are craving for, is someone with your sort of drive and initiative and passion. So thank you for sharing that with us, Zane, and I wish you all the best for the rest of 2023, and we'll definitely be keeping an eye on your progress, because it's going to be an interesting journey, I think.
Yeah, well, again, thank you so much for having me. Even when I saw the podcast and I saw the kind of people you had on, I was like, oh gosh, I don't have that experience, but maybe he wants maybe a newer perspective. So I definitely try to pitch myself in that angle.
Yeah, good for you. And you absolutely hit on, we've got some amazingly experienced people on, but I think, that for balance, I think we sometimes need to hear voices like you. And a lot of professional institutions in the internal communication space are actively trying to, make it a profession of choice. A lot of people historically have drifted into it through other channels or other professions. So I think it's, making that a choice like you have is something a lot of organizations are trying to do. So it's great to hear from someone like you about your first impressions, but also, what energizes and motivates you. So I think that's a really, really useful conversation. So again, well done to you for spotting that opportunity and approaching me. So look, Zane, thank you very much. You take care, and we'll be in touch, I'm sure, at some point in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much again.
Take care. Bye-bye, Zane. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Engaging Internal Comms podcast. If you've got any ideas for episodes you'd like us to cover in future, you can email us at info@thebigpicturepeople.co.uk, or you can use the feedback form at engagingic.com. If you're not already subscribed to the show via your podcast platform, please do so. And if you could leave a review for us, that would be absolutely fantastic. We have links to other episodes at engagingic.com. All of our previous episodes are available there. And if you're interested in our visual communication services, our big pictures, our learning maps, our explainer videos, and also our live graphic recording, please get in touch with us again at info@thebigpicturepeople.co.uk. Thank you.